fact, if there's one thing the corona crisis has exposed, it's just how complicated and how difficult our relationship with China really is. For several decades after Deng Xiaoping's opening up of the economy in the late 1970s, the uncritical view was that China was a gold mine for our exports. They were on the money, $130 billion of it. In fact, that's the value of what we export to China each and every year. Chinese students were another gold mine too. 200,000 of them here at any one time paying big money for an Australian university education. But you want to look carefully at this. There's real concerns. It's the visa they're buying and the path to permanent residency as much as the bit of paper at the end. Now, none of this seemed a problem a little while back, at least while China was in bide and hide mode, biding its time and hiding its strength, and more or less pretending to be a good international citizen that was gradually liberating its economy and giving its people a better chance at life. From 2015, all of that started to change. China started to militarise the South China Sea and stepped up the bullying of its neighbours. The leader of the Chinese Communist Party had himself declared president for life. Internal repression was ratcheted up with 1984-style electronic surveillance of the whole population, plus the disappearance of democracy activists, the expulsion of foreign journalists, and the detention of up to 1 million Uyghurs in so-called re-education camps. Then there was this virus that's now spread from Wuhan throughout the entire world, killing nearly 250,000 people so far and causing catastrophic damage to global economies. Notoriously, the Chinese doctors who first realised what was going on were arrested for spreading false rumours. China was culpably slow to admit human-to-human transmission, and the China-dominated World Health Organization kept congratulating China for its transparency, despite a very obvious cover-up. That's why the Prime Minister is spot on in his demand for a full international inquiry into the origins of this plague, which has caused so much damage. Yet instead of showing the humility you'd expect of a country that has been the source of all this loss of life and treasure, China is simultaneously posing as the world saviour on one hand by ostentatiously shipping out masks, PPE and testing kits to other countries, while at the same time making threats against anyone demanding that China come clean on just really what happened in Wuhan. Ridiculously, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesmen have even tried to blame this whole corona crisis on the US military. Regrettably, China's ambassador to Australia has been one of the most belligerent of the regime's mouthpieces, threatening to damage our economy by cutting exports and tourism numbers if Australians don't show the Chinese more respect. Even though it is absolutely our right to demand a proper explanation for this disease that has killed Australians and crippled our economy, the threats from China continue. And it was into this diplomatic minefield that iron ore billionaire Twiggy Forrest yesterday made his rather peculiar intervention. While being critical of the Australian government's approach to China, Twiggy Forrest is also apparently been trying to source medical supplies from China on the government's behalf. And yesterday he helped enable the Chinese Consul General to broadcast his pro-China propaganda. Now, some questions from me. I thought Twiggy's procurement of all this medical equipment was an act of philanthropy, but today it's been revealed in the Australian newspaper that Australian taxpayers are reimbursing him. I wasn't aware of that. Were you? Why isn't the federal government buying this equipment direct? Why the mining middleman? Are we even sure that this equipment isn't like the other faulty stuff bought from China but later rejected by other countries in the same fate as we are? Let's not forget that in January, Chinese companies based in Australia, of course, were racing around buying up whatever they could to ship back home before the world woke up to this virus. What sort of transparent procurement process has been undertaken in relation to the Twiggy Forrest buy? After all, it's a transaction worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And why are we even spending hundreds of millions of dollars for more Chinese equipment when China sent us this virus in the first place? Why isn't the money being spent in Australia to upskill our own manufacturers to make these items here? 2020, well, it's the year of the Chinese rat. Funny about that.